Hi again, folks. Ken Michaels here on my YouTube channel, where, as you know, I interview lots of people who are connected to the Beatles in some fashion. And just a couple of videos back, actually yesterday, I interviewed Denny Seiwell, the first drummer in Wings and also the drummer on the Ram album. And I interviewed him because of a brand new tribute album that's coming out May 14th called Ram On for the 50th anniversary of Paul and Linda McCartney's album. And Denny is co-producer of that album. And with me right now is the other co-producer, Fernando Perdomo. Welcome to Ken Michaels Radio.
Hi, Ken. Thanks for having me on, man. And thank you so much for the love for this project.
Well, I just received it and I've listened to the whole album and I'm so impressed by what I've been hearing. Um, Explain to me, I know Denny said that not that long ago you asked him to just do some drumming on a few Ram songs, and then that eventually turned into this full project. Did you kind of
Yeah,
know, did you kind of know in the very beginning you wanted to do something for the 50th anniversary?
this is what happened. So I was in a band called Open Sound, and one of the things is that we wanted to do like a kind of like a random covers record. And my partner in the band had suggested Too Many People, and I was like, I know the drummer on that. It would be pretty awesome if we got him in. We just paid him, and let's be awesome if we didn't have him do a couple tunes. You pick Too Many People. I'll pick a song I want to do, and I picked Some People Never Know from Wildlife.
Very
And
cool.
he came in. We did the two songs. He loved my studio. He loved working with me. I loved working with him. And we kept in touch. The project Open Sound kind of fell apart, or my partnership with this other guy didn't work out. And I always thought, Denny, it would be really awesome if, for the 50th anniversary coming up, if we did a Ram band and performed the show somewhere like the El Rey in LA.
Hmm.
Well, COVID hit. And what ended up happening was it went from being a show idea to an album, which in many ways is way cooler to me because this album is going to be heard in 30 years. A great show could last forever, as the Beatles, definitely been a good example of that with, all their classic performances. But a good album could really be forever. And making this record was a dream come true. Watching Denny 5 feet away from me playing these drum parts that I've been exposed to. First of all, I became a huge Beatles nut when I was 6 years old.
Hmm.
I immediately became a huge McCartney fan, and for a point, McCartney and Wings had kind of eclipsed the Beatles. I still was a huge Beatles fan, but I had kind of overplayed the Beatles. So my big obsession from 8 to high school was, amongst other things, Wings.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely intimately love, especially McCartney, all the way through Tug of War. Those records are, they're part of all our DNA.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I mean, of all the Beatles, I mean, Paul had the best 70s, period. I mean, John could have, but he took a break. And, George, started off very strong and then kind of, went off into a lot of other different things. Ringo, had some great records, but he had some spotty ones. Paul was inspired all the way through, making incredible life-altering music. And Denny was there at ground zero. And
Mm-hmm.
he's just this New York session jazz drummer who aced an audition, got brought in to be one of 3 drummers on Ram, which is really interesting. Paul was going to hire 3 different drummers, one drummer a week for 3 weeks.
Mm.
And Denny happened to be the first one. And after a few sessions, he called the other drummers and said, I'm just going to use the first guy. And
Yeah.
that's the thing, is like when Paul went to go put Wings together, he called Denny and said, hey, you mind if your wife and you come over to Scotland and spend some time over here? And, he could have had any drummer out there for convenience reasons, but he clicked with Denny. And the music that they made from 71 to 70, 73, 74, 73 is just incredible. the life altering, life changing. You don't even have to be a Beatles fan to know "Live and Let Die" and "My Love" and "Alba Halsey." And
Uh-huh.
those are perfect. They're absolutely perfect. And that's what made this album too also daunting, is that it's not just a great Paul McCartney record. For many, it is the Paul McCartney record. And that's interesting because I mean, now I can't even fathom how the reviews were bad, because it's such an inspired record and it's such a great learning experience with this record from a young age. One of the things that I've learned a lot about Ram is it's got so many different genre changes. It kind of teaches you that you don't just have an album shouldn't just be a collection of singles. It should be an experience. And
Hmm.
Ram takes you on a journey from the rock and roll, lead guitar anthem, of Too Many People, into a blues tune like Three Legs, into a ukulele, a melancholy ukulele song like Ram On,
Uh-huh.
into a Beach Boys thing like, Dear Boy, into a very Beatles-ish multi-part epic, into like a blues shuffle,
Hmm.
Smile Away, and country, Heart of the Country, like folk acoustic, into kind of like a Leon Russell thing with Monkberry Moon Delight, into just like there's so much variety. And that's the thing that is a lost art these days. When you put on some hit record, Ariana Grande record or whatever,
Hmm.
it's the same thing all the way through. It's like these songs, it almost came to the point where it's like a joke. It's like the two Nickelback songs that are exactly the same when you play them together. You can't do that with Paul. He never really repeated himself. He always had a lot of variety on the records, and that's what made this record so much fun, is that there's so much ground to cover and so many different personalities, and it's all brilliant.
I can tell you just from everything you just said, I can go off in 1,000 different directions with your comments, because to me, McCartney is the ultimate eclectic artist. Variety is the hallmark of his career. I mean, you talked about Tug of War, so many different genres of music on that album, on
Yeah,
Flowers in the Dirt,
yeah.
on so many of his solo albums.
Even McCartney 3, who starts an album with an instrumental in 2021? It's incredible that he's 78 going on 20 always, and he's always very experimental. And I'm excited about the reimagined, because I thought Khruangbin was one of my personal secret weapons. Whenever I want to I get accused sometimes of being old fashioned and not with it. And I listen to a lot of great new music. I love Tame Impala. I love Khruangbin. I love Wolfpack. There's so many great singer-songwriters that I'm into. And when I saw that Khruangbin was going to do a track on this, I was just like, oh my God. Because you got to dig deep for Khruangbin. They are successful, but they are a perfect example of an eclectic indie band. These three kids from Houston, Texas or whatever, playing Thai funk, wordless mostly. And I'm excited to see what they come up with Paul, because Laura Lee is one of the best bass players I've ever heard. And I'm sure that's one of the things that perked his ear, because her bass lines are super cool. And, Mark Spears' guitar playing is nuts. I mean, it's just like, but again, that's the entire history of Paul, always being eclectic and always listening to tons of music,
I'm
and
wondering if he really knows all those artists, or if they're just suggestions that people
God,
around him
I
have
hope
made.
so. No, I don't think. I think he seeked them out. You know, this is the same guy that has reinvented himself constantly by going out of his genre. Uh, from like ending his first album with a drum solo to, McCartney 2 with all his experiments in electronica and craft
Hmm.
work, and the Fireman,
Right.
from Strawberry Ocean Ships Forest sounding like a strip club part anthem, and going to like Electric Arguments, which is aside from a few vocal tunes, you can't even tell it's Paul. It's so cool, that he could wear all the disguises, and be so unpredictable. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And still be successful. Because that's the thing, is that there's a lot of artists that have gone off the deep end, that have tanked their careers, but Paul always figures out a way to be eclectic and successful at the same time.
Since you're so impressed with, it sounds like, his entire body of work, what is it about Ram in particular? And I know I asked Denny this question. Why is it in recent years gaining in stature the way that it has, to the point where so many of his fans are listing it as their number one or way up top, the list of McCartney albums?
It has aged better than most of his other records, because even though stylistically it was very forward thinking, being the fact that Paul was out of his comfort zone, being the fact that this was the first record he made in New York, it doesn't have a lot of technical advances that would doom it, like synthesizers, like disco, like it's a very forward sounding 1971 record.
Hmm.
That's the interesting thing about Ram, is that it's aged better than a lot of his other records. For example, Press to Play,
Hmm.
Silly Love Songs, Pipes of Peace, even Off the Ground, has a lot of things that instantly pinpoint it as, yeah, that's a 93, that a lot of the drum loops and stuff, and things like that. Ram is just a meat and potatoes great record. There's not a lot of, even as keyboard wise, it's piano, Rhodes, organ. There's nothing. Uh, this is very important about Ram. It's organic,
Hmm. And
and it's
we're
a
living at a
record
time
that
when more people want that.
it's got a lot of humanity in it.
Hmm.
You feel like there's real collaboration happening between Paul, Denny, and whoever was on guitar, whether it's Hugh or Dave.
Hmm.
And then the orchestral stuff is just takes you somewhere. And it's really cool that that's the record where, after the first record being just Paul, where you sense some jamming, you know, and especially when you hear like Road All Night and stuff
Oh
like
yeah.
that. That's Paul and Denny going at it, just jamming. And that was a missing element of the McCartney record, is that even though Paul, there is some jamming on the record, it's still just Paul. So it's a return to Paul, the band member, even though it's Paul solo, Paul Linda record. But it's the beginning of what Paul would explore with Wings. So obviously, when he went to go put Wings together, he actually, Denny told me that he did put a call into Hugh, and Hugh just couldn't leave his session work,
Right.
which is
I know.
what claimed Denny, which was what claimed Dave Spinoza, sorry. He couldn't resist booking other sessions because they were so in demand.
Hmm.
And Paul, the first thing he said is, don't book anything for 6 weeks. And Spinoza booked a jingle session and got caught. And, but Denny and Paul had an incredible rapport. And it's amazing the music that they made, and it's amazing how good they sounded together. And Ram, to me, is the album that has it all. Like, as I say in the inside, it's like, it's incredible that an album with so many different genres could be such an incredible statement. Because you look back at every record and say, okay, that was me in 71. Paul in 71 was unstoppable. He was inspired. He was happy. He was determined to really make something incredible. And, even though there was turmoil between the Beatles, Paul turned it into something beautiful. Because too many people, yes, he is, throwing some shade at John, but it's not hate.
Hmm.
It's just disappointment. It's not how you sleep. It's not vitriol. It's just Paul is, hurt. And it's more proof positive with dear friend and here today that Paul really loved John, and Paul
Oh,
really loved George and Ringo, and he was more hurt than mad, you know. And
hmm.
it's a beautiful thing. That record really, I never get tired of it. I never get bored. I never go through phases. I go through phases where it's like, yeah, I don't really feel like listening to Press to Play or even like I go through phases with Flaming Pie. I go through phases with Driving Rain. They're great records, but I never get mad at Ram. It always delivers to me. And there was you never forget that first time you put the needle down and heard the beginning of Too Many People. It just hits you and it grabs your attention, and it's just like for the next 50 minutes, you're Paul. You're in Paul's grasp. And it never fails to make me smile hearing the over the top vocals on Monkberry,
Oh
the
God.
groove, the intense groove on Smile Away, the intense vocal characters on Halsey. Even it's like Halsey was played to death on the radio, but it never stops. It never gets old to me. It always makes me excited. I always get chills hearing all the backup vocals on the yeah yeahs, and the when the rain comes in, you're just like, you close your eyes and you imagine. I'll never forget hearing Another Day for the first time on Wings Greatest and going, there's something special about that song.
Hmm.
And I had no idea that that's the first song that they recorded together. Denny was fresh off of that audition. Paul had just met Spinoza because Spinoza never auditioned. He basically said, Denny, who's the best guitar player in New York? He says, Dave Spinoza. That was their first day. And Paul sat down with the acoustic guitar and played Another Day, and they looked at each other and said, whoa, we are in for a ride, because that's an incredible composition. And making this record, it made making this record easier because it's like I've done tribute records for like Yes and working on one for Genesis, and sometimes it's harder to find people that are as excited about that stuff than it is, because what I've learned is that it's easier to find someone that's never heard Ram than to find someone that doesn't like it, because it's a record that across the board, it's a life changer.
Hmm.
It's a record that even Paul haters love, even people that think he's the cheesy Beatle. That's the freaking album that no one could say a thing about, because it's easy to poke fun at stuff like Wonderful Christmas Time, or With a Little Luck, or Press to Play. Okay, I understand, because those are they have their moments where you're like, okay, that didn't
Well,
age, but Ram has aged better than any Paul record.
well,
You know,
I think you speak so well on this, and I respect your opinion. We do have different opinions here for sure, because Press to Play is like my second favorite McCartney album of all time. And when I listen to it, I don't think to myself, "Oh, that's the '80s." There's a lot of '80s music that I hear in today's music. So,
I
it's
come from a weird place. I hate to. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm a producer,
hmm,
and from an early state, from an early age, I can't stand '80s production, especially '84 to '89. In the dark ages is 86, 87, 88, because even drums were treated to sound like drum machines. And recently, Pink Floyd remixed Momentary Lapse of Reason to take out those fake elements and to take out the synths and replace them with the organ parts. And maybe Press to Play would be a fun record to do stripped down, without the session guys, without the chorus on the guitar and the synths and the just the that
More the vision of what Eric Stewart wanted.
exactly, because Eric
Yeah.
Stewart would never have gone as far as as it was taken with the sterility of the production. That's the
Okay.
problem, is that nobody was spared. Every artist from 86 to 88, even like U2, like bands, things got sterile. You even listen to like Jeff Lynne productions, and he's using drum machines, and
Mhm.
you even look at country in 87, 88, 89, and everybody's got that machine gun snare drum with all the reverb on it, and guitars plugged into Rockmans and Steinbergers and DX7s, and it hasn't aged well. And one of the things that I love, look, I'm a guitar player. I'm wearing a
Mhm.
Slingerland drum shirt.
Right.
I like the sound of a drum kit sounding like a drum kit. And it hurts me that such great songs, Stranglehold, even like even I love Flowers in the Dirt.
Mhm.
That record still kills me. But Rough Ride, that snare drum sound, that
Mhm.
the little plinky keyboards, and Chris Whitten was a great drummer, but he had that sound. He had that smooth session man, Noble and Cooley, very bright cymbals. I loved Blair Cunningham because talk about a complete 180. Half the drums on Off the Ground are brushes. Biker Like an Icon,
Hmm.
Hope of Deliverance. It's a return to more of an organic approach, which is great because I love Off the Ground. I'm one of those. I'm an off the ground. I could probably spend an hour dissecting Off the Ground on why I think that's one of the more brilliant records that he put out.
Okay.
But to each their own. And I every couple of years I put on Press to Play and say, I'm getting older. Let me see if I could get a better beat on it. And the songwriting is fantastic.
Yes.
Paul is inspired, Paul's in love, Paul's happy. But that record suffers due to the production.
Okay.
That's the thing to me.
All right. We can differ on that, but
Of course.
the songs always matter first for me, and production is secondary. It's important, but it's nowhere near as important as the quality of the songs. And
I agree.
I've never been affected by the 80s sound at all. I still love the sound of it. I think it works really well on those songs. But you know, I'm not someone that's affected by, when I hear this is aged well, this is not aged well. If I liked it in the past, I still like it now, or I like it
Yeah.
more.
I'm
So,
a diehard 70s guy. I collect, all my guitars are from the 70s. I don't have a Steinberger. I don't have a ZX7. I don't have a drum machine. My only
hmm,
drum machine was made in 1972. It's called a Rivamace, and it sounds like a drum machine, which, you know, it's the Bluebird sound, and I like that because it's not designed to replace. It's designed to be a texture.
mhm,
And look, going back to Ram, it definitely doesn't have any of those production spikes that will okay, a word I love is that word that's like polarizing. It's one of the least polarizing Paul records
mhm,
because even the most staunch hipster that doesn't like disco or doesn't like synthesizers or doesn't like um anything past 73, it's a record where the production is very, it's more of the production is there to enhance as opposed to be the main focus, you
mhm.
know and I love it. And it's a warm hug. That record's a warm hug, while a lot of 80s stuff is like a digital, sheen, too much sheen. The difference between a beautiful girl with no makeup on and a supermodel. The difference between a beer and a Zima. the difference between a Ford truck and a Ferrari. You know, I kind of am more along the lines of I like things. I personally like things a little less adorned,
Okay.
but I love Prague. So it's interesting that like I could completely lose my mind over a UK record or a Gentle Giant record or a Curved Air record or, you know, I've recently gotten into an 80s band. I just got into a band called Cassiopeia, which was a funk band from Japan.
Hmm.
And they were DX7 poster boys. But I love it because there's heart behind it. And recently I've checked out their new lineup where the keyboard player plays an organ mostly. And I like that better. But, you know, still, yes, I could look beyond the technology and see the magic. But I kind of prefer my music to sound organic, like a bunch of people in a room together, which is great.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right. Hey, listen, the 70s are my favorite decade overall. So we're alike in that department.
yeah, yes.
But let's talk about the tribute because I must tell you, first of all, what impresses me most about it was the attention to the detail in all of the instrumentation. It's like you knew every single part and what had to be played, and you wanted it to be as faithful to the original as possible. And beyond that, and I don't know if you're expecting me to say this, what really blows me away is how Linda McCartney's background vocals are treated so well, especially on something like Ram On or what Carney Wilson sings in Long Haired Lady, the Love is Long part. I mean, she sounds a bit like Linda.
Well, we
I think
wanted
so.
one of the things that sets this record apart from other tribute records is that we decided that we weren't going to go the typical route of who could sell records. Let's get Justin Bieber to do Heart of the Country, or let's
Hmm.
get Panic at the Disco to do Smile Away, or let's get Dave Grohl. I have nothing against these artists, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to make it a album that's 100% Ram fans, not just Beatles fans, not just Paul fans, people that live and breathe this record and will give it the respect it deserves.
Hmm.
And everybody on this record is, giving it their heart and soul. And when it came to the vocal parts, you know, God, Linda was just perfect for it's incredible. She, as being a non-musician, man, her vocal tone gives me chills.
Hmm.
And especially like, even when as it evolved, to the Paul Linda Denny mix,
Right.
man, the backup vocals on with a little luck and all the way through, all the records.
Yeah.
But like, man, I mean, it wouldn't have been as cool without Linda's tone. And it really truly was a Paul and Linda record because it was them discovering that they could make music together. Not just home demos,
Yeah.
not just, playing Hey Diddle on the field. This is in a real studio with an orchestra, and their voices together were magic. And we wanted to definitely bring that across and have a human aspect to it because, again, going back, it's like if you bring in perfect like session type musicians, session singers,
Hmm.
it's not going to have the same humanity than someone that is going to give it that imperfection, perfect imperfection.
It's like,
And luckily we were able to find singers that not only sang it with passion but gave it the same feel, because that's the thing, is that this record is full of people that love Ram for what it is. And Jody Quine, who sang the backups on Ram On,
hmm.
perfect angelic voice for that. Even like we deviated on Three Legs because my friend Durga McBroom was sang with Pink Floyd from '87 on. She's got a big gospel voice, and she still brought the Linda energy, with a completely different type of voice. When she's singing those backups on Three Legs, sure, it's from a black gospel side, but it still has that Linda swagger, which is really, really cool. And like when Denny signed on to do this, he said, I got to have final choice on the singers. And it led to, it's a really good thing because he didn't pick the singers based on fame or clout or friendships even. He just said, this is the one that's doing it for me. And a perfect example is Adrian Bourgeois, who sings Dear Boy.
Yeah.
He's an unknown. He's 26 years old, and he beat out some heavyweights. And it's just like across the board, he was the one who gave us the feels. And we love that maybe people are going to discover their new favorite artist from this record, as opposed to just getting a tribute record and being like, I know what this guy could do. And he did a good job. No, I want people to be like, who the hell's that? Oh my God, I got to check out everything he's done,
Right.
which would be really wonderful, because part of what I wanted to do is make a great record as opposed to just a throwaway you listen to once and say, well. And another thing is, I've seen what people have said about the record, and it's really exciting to me that the two types of comments I've seen is, oh my God, this is amazing, or why the hell does this exist? And I kind of like that, because I don't want the middle ground of, oh, that's nice, oh, that's cool, and then next thing you know, it just sits there and nobody listens to it. I want people to be either completely love it or just brutalize it. I don't care if people say this sucks. Why recreate a perfect record? No, give it a chance. And if you love it, great. If you don't, tell us why, because honestly, I'm always excited to see the positive or the negative, because it makes you feel alive. It makes you feel like you did something that's worth getting people to talk about it.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
love
cool.
what you said about Linda's backing vocals and harmonies, because I remember distinctly after she died, the new releases that Paul was putting out, while I loved them, all of a sudden I felt like something was missing. You noticed
Yeah,
it. It
yeah. And
just
Linda was perfect for the songs. And I was there firsthand watching all the brutal attacks towards her. And God, I mean, she was the fuel in his tank, so inspiring to him. And it was his safety blanket. And she really brought the songs out. And it's a really big part of what his sound was, and
yeah.
I miss her every day, and the album that really made me lose my mind was Wings of America. And God, how cool. The moment that changed my life was VH1 had an all Paul McCartney day as a kind of like a publicity stunt
Hmm.
for the release of Flowers in the Dirt. This is
Okay.
'89, so I'm
Yep.
8 years old, and I taped it on an 8-hour VHS tape. And that was my first exposure to, because they played stuff off the rock show. They played like the promo videos for My Love, and they played the promo video for With a Little Luck and Good Night Tonight. And
Right.
that was like, oh my God, this is everything I want from pop music. And I remember watching those Wings Over America videos and going, she's got a Mini Moog, she's got a Pro DGX, she's playing two synthesizers at the same time with like ruffly wings. And I was in love. I was just like, oh my God, that's dream girl material right there. And I never once was like, oh, that's just his wife, she's only there because it's his wife. She deserved to be there, man. She was a badass. And in these days where the female energy is still very pasteurized in pop music, with the Ariana Grandes and the Dua Lipas and stuff like that don't even write their own songs, don't play an instrument. That's the thing that I'm completely mind boggled by singers that don't play an instrument. You're perfecting your art. How are you going to accompany yourself? And the fact that she was able to learn keys and learn how to sing in such a fast time and be able to compete with a Beatle,
Hmm.
how be able to share a stage with a Beatle. And Denny will be like, she was horrified. Like he tells a story about how she one night, like the first night of the university tour, she didn't want to go on. And he's like, you got to do this. You got to be part of this. You're part of the band. Get up there.
Hmm.
And she nailed it. And I love stuff like I Am Your Singer, and Long Haired Lady,
Hmm.
and even some of the recordings that I never got to hear until later, like Seaside Woman.
Sure.
Man, she's great. And
Hmm.
and I'll take a singer with personality over a singer with technique, because that's the thing. It's like, I'm not a fan of American Idol or The Voice, because I was watching once and they had a girl that had a great voice, and he's like, you've got a lot of personality and you got like a singer songwriter vibe, but this is a singing show. It's like the difference between you know actually using your strength as an athlete to
Hmm.
like the uh, whatever tree cutting competitions, or like the way I look at American Idol and The Voice is like, okay, it's great that you could do Christina Aguilera runs and do all the hysterics and the pyrotechnics. That's the same reason I'm not as impressed by shredding guitar players. Like, Eddie Van Halen was great, but I remember going to see like Joe Satriani and going, it's a run-on sentence. I'd rather hear the solo in something
Yeah.
than Eruption. I'd rather hear Paul McCartney bending the strings out of tune a little bit on Too Many People than some of the more pasteurized late 80s shredding. And I love Steve Lukather to death, but it's like that super, every note is fluid, and
Hmm.
it's okay, to each his own. But I love passion in
Right.
music, and Ram is full of passionate performances, from that drum fill at the end of, man, that drum feature at the end of Backseat of My Car.
Yeah.
It's like every hair on your body and your head is like standing on end, because it's just like one of those magical moments, the orgasmic moments in rock and roll. And the little one note guitar line that happens in the breaks of dear I always say dear friend, dear boy, dear boy. And it's just like, wow, it's perfect. It's just, this record gives me chills without even listening to it. That's the mark of a great record. When you like think about those moments and go, my God, I'm not even hearing this track and it's still affecting me. That's the mark of a true genius record. And Ram is just one of those genius records that will stand the test of time and will influence people forever.
Hmm. I could just let you talk and keep going. But I agree with so much of what you're saying there, especially about American Idol. And there are singers from the past who are still with us, like a Barbara Streisand or a Dionne Warwick, and those are such wonderful singers that really know how to control their voice, and they're not into what I call vocal acrobatics, like a lot of the new singers of today. It's more about feel, whether they touch you, than perfection, if you even want to call it that. So I
Feels a
agree
good
with. Hmm?
feels a good word. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, oh, I also wanted to point out another thing that I love that you did here was that at the end of Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey, where you had the guitar parts that lead into Smile Away, you could have just as easily not done that at all. And that really sounds as close to the record as possible.
It's a part of the experience,
Hmm.
you know. Ha- Denny was is not a huge fan of Ram On, because he wasn't on those tracks, and he felt like they were always like a additional, like, it's just part of the story. It's like, you know, okay, is Ram On and Three Legs the same like quality of craft as Backseat of My Car? Okay, they're simple, but they're palate cleansers. It's the album is okay. Ram On is one of the best sequenced albums of all time, because it takes you from the beginning. From the beginning of Too Many People, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then after too many people, it takes down a notch to Three Legs, which is like a blues tune, into a ukulele song, which in 1971, the ukulele was a novelty instrument. It's Tiny Tim, you know. Paul was like, you could be emotional on a ukulele. And it kind of spawned the entire ukulele genre. I mean, if it wasn't for Ramon, we wouldn't have the 10,000 ukulele people on YouTube these days where, you know, it's like, that's the cool thing. It's like, oh, I'll play this rock song on a ukulele. And it really sold more ukuleles than any other song ever to me. And it's like into a Beach Boys thing, Dear Boy, into this epic. And it's like, how do you follow Uncle Albert? Oh my God, it's a blues shuffle, Smile Away, into a down home country Americana thing with, you know, Heart of the Country, into this like Leon Russell barroom piano thing with, you know, Monkberry Moon Delight, you know. Come on. I mean, it's really interesting to see the variety on the record coming from a small group of musicians and a brain that's just musical ADD with okay, one thing is to have an album where every song sounds like a different band. It's different genres, but it's all Paul. Because that's the thing that makes Paul really interesting to me, is that he's just as inspired writing a typical Paul song like Maybe I'm Amazed, but he also goes whole hog on stuff like Queen of Croy and you know, Morse Moose and the Grey Goose and you know, freaking Check My Machine, you know, Temporary Secretary. That's Paul wearing a hat, but it's still Paul, you know. It's still Paul going whole hog on a cosplay. I mean, because cosplay is a big part of what we do, you know. It's like Sea Moon, reggae, but it's done with heart, you know. Same thing goes to when Paul, you know, did what was that song he did? Cut Me Some Slack. You know,
with Dave
Grohl.
Grohl.
It's still done with emotion. And as much as I, you know, okay, Follow You was a little shocking, and the song he did with Kanye, but still, it's got emotion, it's got heart. You know, I'm sure if Paul did any genre, he would put in the same amount of heart, because Paul's a heart guy. You know, it's like even if he's being goofy on purpose, you know, it's still done with a lot of respect for the art, because he went whole hog on that stuff. You know, I mean, God, who was doing? I mean, he was obviously influenced by like Kraftwerk with like Temporary Secretary and Check My Machine, but it's done with Paul's genius and Paul's melodic genius. Because, man, if you dissect Temporary Secretary, it's a really cool song. It's just striking to hear such mechanical music coming out of a guy who's known for being so organic and so human.
Right.
So,
he's so adaptable. He's very adaptable to everything, really.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I love this stuff. I mean, that's, again, it made this album easy and hard to make, because easy as in these songs, we didn't have to learn them. We know them. Hard because we had a standard to hit. And, you know, Denny was there when Paul pulled out a guitar and said, this song's called Another Day. When Paul sat down at the piano and said, this is a Little Woman Love, you know, whatever, you know, still, it's done. He's such a badass. And his vocals were on fire in 71.
Oh, yeah.
Scientifically, I learned something. When I thought of singers for this album, I thought of guys that had high voices. Paul is an anomaly because he has a high voice that's husky. And even when he sings at the highest part of his register, it's still ballsy as hell. And we had some people try songs that had like a very like high power pop voice, and it thins out. And, you know, Denny was like, it just doesn't have the balls. Because even when Paul was at his tweest, you know, it still has warmth to it.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, So Bad still has balls, even though he's singing it. It still has warmth and a lot of low end information in the high part of his voice. It's gorgeous, you
I
know.
love your analysis. You're talking about it still having huskiness in a high register. I mean, you think of Monkberry Moon Delight. My God.
Oh, darling,
Yeah.
Monkberry Moon Delight, Helter Skelter, Oh Siam Sir, Old Siam Sir.
Yeah.
What, you know, he's screaming like he's getting stabbed, but he's still got power. You know, the end of Beware My Love, Soily,
Oh, yeah.
freaking God, that stuff kills me. You know,
The pound is sinking. That one
Pound is
part of the
sinking.
year.
Well, yeah, God, that's the thing. Being a Paul fan is so rewarding in so many ways. It's just
Mm.
about Todd Rundgren. You mentioned Todd Rundgren, and he's another example of a person that has released a lot of material, and there's so much to digest, and it takes you on a huge journey throughout his discography. And same thing goes to all the greats,
Mm.
Billy Joel, freaking, it's interesting to see that artists are never tired of they. Paul never once said, I'm just going to be lazy and, give people what they want. It's always what he wants, and what he wants is variety. And again,
Yeah.
he's 78 years old, and he puts out an album as varied as McCartney 3.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's not the surefire hit on there. Maybe Seize the Day, maybe,
Find My Way.
Find My Way. But then there's Deep, Deep Down, which,
No.
holy crap, that's like Kate Bush, Tears for Fears, Japan. It reminds me of Japan. Remember the band Japan? It kind of has that vibe to it. And it's just like, it's got Radiohead in it. It's got like, it's a deep cut, but it's part of me wishes that they would have released that as the first single. Could be
Deep Deep
like
Feeling.
Deep Deep Feeling.
It's 10 minutes long, I think.
Well, talk about a statement.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney ain't ready to go play the Chili Festival. That's the thing that's kind of hurt a lot of my favorite bands, is that they stop making records, and next thing you know, it's like, play the hits. I was in this movie called Echo in the Canyon, and there's a great part where David Crosby says, nothing's worse than, turn the fog machine on and play the hits. Because that's something that Paul never fell into he's always playing new material. He plays the hits, but he's never become that. Appearing now at the, Poughkeepsie Chili Festival.
Mm.
I hate to throw them under the bus, but it's like, one member of Three Dog Night, One Dog Night playing the hits, or like, there's a lot of artists that fall into that. Oh, we're going to play a medley of our hits now,
Mm.
That's the thing. He's going to be creative till the day he dies. Hopefully in 30 years after he does McCartney 5,
McCartney 10.
McCartney 10 with new advances. McCartney 22.
So
Floating
tell
head in a
me,
jar.
which songs here were really the most difficult to recreate. I'm guessing
Easy.
one in particular. Tell me if I'm right. I would think Uncle Albert Admiral Halsey must have been the most difficult because of all the tempo changes.
Nope, because as Denny let me know, the drum track you hear on the record is a one take all the way through. They rehearsed that to death, and to the point where Paul, Hugh, and Denny recorded that in one take. And when Denny cut the drums on this, he did it in one take. From what I've experienced being 40 and working with a lot of musicians in their 70s, I've worked with Peter Noon, I've worked with Carmine Appice, I'm making a record with him. I've worked with the Parahacks, Emmett Rhodes, Curved Air. What I notice is, to be a musician in the 60s and the 70s, there wasn't the technology to comp your vocals. There wasn't the technology to auto-tune. There wasn't drum machines. There wasn't click tracks even. You had to be able to sing a song all the way through.
Hmm.
Nobody sang songs piecemeal until 48 track machines, until 24 track machines. I think the first artist to ever comp their vocals really was the Bee Gees. And they'd be like, okay, give us 6 tracks. We'll do 6 vocals and then we'll comp it. No, vocal comping wasn't a thing until 78, 79, 80, 81. And these older musicians, they're used to having to play something in one take.
Hmm.
And Denny, most of the drum tracks on this record are full takes. Little things here and there. Oh, okay, we got to move this here, or this part was better on this other take, this section. But most of it is full takes. And that track was a full take. And Bebopalula, who did it, took the reins on that one. And they did it very faithful. With just some changes, like the singing on that. If you notice a French accent, the guy who sings the Almo Halsey part is full-blooded French. So it's like there's a little bit of a French accent there, some different style voices. But that one's pretty straight on. The hardest song to nail was "Oh Woman, Oh Why," and "Backseat of My Car."
And why
Backseat
so?
of My Car because it's so epic. And because the vocal is so complicated on that. Brentley Gore, who sang it, we had to go a few different directions with him. And he got ill during the making of that. And we had to like wait till he got better for him to nail that final part, you know. And he absolutely knocked it out of the water to the point where I'm not going to say who it was, but a very famous indie artist contacted me and said, I want to sing Backseat of My Car. And like, Denny's already picked that. And he never even wrote back. He got mad. And, you know, it would have been a much more sellable record if that guy would have gotten on it. But, oh well. I love Brentley. Brentley was the only singer that Denny brought to the table. He kind of put me in charge of casting the record, which was great because a lot of my really talented Ram friends got on it, but some didn't. And it was my job to tell them, look, Denny's not into it. You know, he wants to pick this guy over you. And it was difficult because some really talented people didn't make the cut. But again, Denny picked the singers and the performances based on the talent and based on their ability to sell it and be the guy, as he calls it, as opposed to, you know, even Eric Dover of Jellyfish. The reason that "Oh Woman, Oh Why" was difficult is that I always heard that song a little more rock, and I took it a little too far in the rock because when I brought in Eric Dover, he did his thing, and it's very Steven Tyler. It's very, you know, Steve Marriott. It's very I even said he sounds like Alex Harvey at points, and it's really cool. But Denny was like, I'm not sold on the way the B sections sound. You know, it's too rock star. And my original idea on that song was to have a girl sing it. Because again, you know, I didn't want anybody to hurt their voices because that's Paul at the top of his lungs. And I had Lauren Lee cut an incredible version. And I thought it'd be really cool to have a female getting shot by her girlfriend. You know, somebody said, oh, like, God, that's woke or whatever, you know, whatever. But I didn't want to do it for that reason. I just thought Lauren would kill it. And she did. And in the end, Denny was actually like, I'm not sure about, you know, half of Eric's performance. And I had the idea, the light bulb. Let's turn it into a duet and have Lauren sing for the first time ever, present the girl's side of the story. I'm tired of your cheating, you know, cheating ways. This is why I shot you, you bastard. And it's really cool. And I can't wait to see if we perform this live and to see Lauren and Eric dueling it out on stage, you know, with that, you know, almost, you know, Give Me Shelter, Tina Turner, Bryan Adams type energy, you know.
Yeah.
Would be really, really awesome because they both absolutely killed it. We also had to rein in some of the guitar playing because we took it super rock. And he's like, yeah, but it's still got to have that Paul feel. Because even though that's Paul kind of cosplaying a Led Zeppelin free type thing, like All Right Now, big power chords, it's still Paul. It's still very much, what I call crazy Paul, which is that punky, screamy Paul. And we definitely got it to a place where Denny and I were seeing eye to eye, because for a while he was like, no, man, we got to find somebody that's going to sing it like Paul. And I got my way a little bit there because I'm such a huge Jellyfish fan. And I got to finally work with Eric, and Eric was on the line there. And it was for a second, he was going to get replaced by someone else. And we finally ended up figuring out a way that he could still be rock god and not, and have a little bit of a contrast with Lauren,
Yeah.
But he sounds like $1 million on that record. On that track, it's like, my God, when he comes in, well, I'm not that type of singer. I'm a baritone. And he starts screaming. It's like, oh my God, hair on, every hair on my arm, and I got a lot of hair, freaking standing on end. So it's really cool. But that was hard. And another one that was hard was Dear Boy. I always say Dear Friend because I love that song. But Dear Boy, it's like those harmonies and finding the right guy, and Adrian Bourgeois really, really rose above to the top on there. And there's some great backup vocals. I mean, Rob Bonfiglio from Brian Wilson, John Montagna, Minky Starshine, Robert Goodman, Jim Laspisa. They're really incredible singers. Like we have a lot of members of the Brian Wilson band on the record. Probin Gregory, Jim Laspisa, Rob Bonfiglio, J.K. Harrison. They're all incredible singers. So it was a lot of fun putting all these singers and stirring them in a pot and saying, okay, we're doing Ram. Let's do it right. Let's do it justice. And every singer on the record's a badass. From Carney Wilson and Rob Bonfiglio, they're a husband and wife couple and team, and they have that energy, that Linda Paul energy. And Carney sounds incredible on Long Haired Lady. I'm just so excited. And another great female vocal on the record is also the band Dead Rock West, which is Cindy Wasserman, Rob Wasserman's sister. And Frank Drennan and Cindy Wasserman, they do a lot of, their biggest influence is the Everly Brothers. So they've got a little bit of that vibe on there. And I remember reading a lot about saying, oh, Eat at Home sounds like an Everly Brothers tune. I'm like, well, let's go there. So it was great to have Dead Rock West sing that, because they sang it on one mic, basically. And there's that quality of their voices when they sing together that's very Phil and Don, Phil and Don Everly. So, that's a huge influence on Paul. So giving back, I hope I've heard reports that Paul's heard this and digs it. I'd like to see an email. I'd like to see another text message, because that'll be like life. What do they call it? Achievement unlocked. I love to be in good graces of my record collection. I love the fact that I'm super inspiring to older people and artists that are in the winter of their careers. And I really hope Paul digs it, because I think there's no reason why he wouldn't. I mean, it's done with love, and it's not. This record wasn't done to make a buck. This record was done to celebrate the 50th anniversary of an important record, and to be a good companion to the original.
One last thing: was it difficult, since because of the pandemic you couldn't get everybody in the same room? Everybody had to send you their parts. Is it easy to piece it all together? I'm guessing this is all on Pro Tools. You're doing this?
Well, yeah, Pro Tools was a big reason why this was able to fly. Another reason why this was able to fly is that our mixing engineer, Zach Ziskin's a huge fan of Ram too. So he's also very technically proficient. I mean, we had stuff that was recorded on phones. Marvin Stamm didn't have a home setup, so I taught him how to record his trumpet on his phone. And that's what you hear on Halsey is a trumpet recorded on a phone, and it sounds great. Because, again, having that technical ally in Zach Ziskin to be able to match the sound of, every song was recorded in a different studio, microphone wise. And some had Neumanns, like Pat Sansone has a beautiful Neumann,
Hmm.
and some were recording on USB mics, and we made it work, and it sounds great. And there's a lot of joy. Like, there's a lot to learn from Ram, and the technical aspect of Ram is so great, because it's such a warm recording, and we wanted to make sure that it was as warm as the original. That he recorded on a vintage set of drums. He used the same snare drum he used on the original, an old leady drum that was his dad's.
Yep.
Dave Spinoza used the same Telecaster he used on Another Day. So I asked Marvin if he used the same flugelhorn. He's like, no, I retired that one a long time ago. He's like, is it okay that I used the new one? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It's still you. It's still your lips. Still the same lips, same fingers. And damn, these people are still badasses. I mean, Denny Seiwell is one of the most amazing drummers I've experienced firsthand, because he's still on it. He's still got great groove. He still hits the crap out of the drums, and he's just so tasteful. I've actually worked with him on a couple of original projects. He recorded some drums for a project called Life on Mars that I've been working with, and Denny Henry. And it's great how he approaches these original songs. He does the homework. That's another big difference between older musicians and younger musicians. He actually spends hours on each song learning them and perfecting his parts. He doesn't come up with them on the spot in the studio. I actually have been guilty of that before, where I show up and I'd rather not learn the song and learn it on the spot and just like be fresh with it. Denny really puts a lot of brain into it, and he's an incredible musician. He sat down at my piano during the Denny Henry session, and he's a badass piano player. He sounds like Leon Russell. And again, I was like, oh wow, you're not just a drummer, you're a musician too. The old joke. But he's got a great ear. He could tell when someone's pitchy. He could tell when someone's struggling. And that's when he chose the singers. He chose right. And every choice he made on this record is the right one. As much as it broke my heart, there's a couple of people that didn't make the record that were really, truly sad about it. And, that's the thing. When Denny signed on to do this, he had to make the choices, and he did great choices.
There's a lot of talents.
I can't believe that I co-produced a record with Denny Seiwell. A guy that we did an interview once, and they were like, so who were the musicians that made you want to be a musician? And I pointed at Denny, because when I was learning the guitar, it was right at the exact time that I was obsessed with Wings. One of the first songs I learned ever on guitar was Mola Kintyre. Simple song.
Right.
And another song that I learned, one of the first songs I learned was Ooh You. I'm a lifer. And I used to play all the instruments too. And I one of the first songs I drummed to, like I learned on drums, was Big Barn Bed. And I love that song, and I've had the joy of sitting on at Denny's drum room. He has two drum kits in front of each other.
Yeah.
And I've had the joy of double drumming with him, and it's exhilarating. It's so cool.
That's got to be a blast.
Yeah, the best.
So are you going to redo Wildlife next? Is that what's in the
I want to.
plans? Are you
we
serious?
Already have one song, and we already have Some People Never Know. So it's just 7 other songs, And I already got some voice. I already, like, from the people that sang on this record, I've already kind of paired them up with other songs. So it wouldn't be too hard to do. And then we'll do Red Rose. And then I thought it'd be really fun to do Band on the Run with Denny's original parts.
Okay. I would love to hear, because, I've talked to him about this, how the band rehearsed the material of Band on the Run before Denny and Henry left. And man, would I have loved to have heard that. And wouldn't that have been fantastic to put on the Band on the Run box set? But
from what I understand, the problem is he got mugged, the tapes were stolen, and one of the conspiracy theories is those tapes were probably reused. Somebody probably taped over him.
So those weren't reel to reels, the original rehearsals?
Cassette tapes.
It was all cassette?
I think so.
Okay. No, I know about the mugging and all, but I still thought that there were the cassettes were a dub from the master, I thought.
Hey, look, there's stuff that comes up. Um, Look, I know firsthand. One of the artists I work with passed away recently, and he left behind like hundreds of unreleased songs that have been now dug up. You know, fuck, man. You know, imagine the Paul McCartney collection, and there's lots of stuff that I'm sure he's not released yet. But
Oh,
he's released more unreleased stuff than other people, because even going back to the original CDs, there was always bonus cuts.
mhm,
I was aware of Zoo Gang, and freaking he always released B-sides.
right.
Big Boys Bickering. It's like Paul releases pretty much everything, and the anthology series, and there's stuff that's probably still hasn't been heard, and
Oh,
I'd
I
love to.
bet there's tons of it. It's a matter of
Yeah.
combing through all of it, and
Denny thought he had the only cassette of Road All Night. He was very surprised when it came out.
mm,
You know, he really thought he had the only cassette of it. So
mm,
maybe we'll get surprised. Maybe the you know everything will come out. All the lost stuff from London Town. All the stuff that got replaced. All the tapes of them jamming on the boat. Freaking anything that they did right after the rehearsal tapes, those videos of Wings rehearsing for the Japan tour, doing With a Little Luck and stuff like
mhm.
that.
Yeah,
There's mind blowing stuff out there. You know,
the last
the
Wings
Lost
rehearsals.
Weekend. Yeah,
The la-
how about the Lost Weekend tapes? The famous the Wasted John, Harry Nilsson, Paul McCartney jam.
yeah, I've heard it.
Carnival of Light.
Well, some will debate whether or not any of that's really good, but just knowing who the people are make
I
it
don't care
interesting.
if it's good. I want to hear it.
Oh, we'll see. At least
Yeah,
the John and Paul with Stevie Wonder and Harry Nilsson. At least that's bootlegged. At least
yeah,
that's out there.
yeah.
But Carnival of Light, who knows when we'll get to hear that. But anyway, as far as Ramon is concerned, initially it's just a CD release.
We did CD for now. The Cherry Red's mostly a CD label. However, we are going to do vinyl. I really feel I basically was like, if we reach a certain quota, we'll do vinyl. It's looking like we will, and I'm thinking Christmas.
Okay. And will there be a digital release?
Oh yeah, oh
Is
yeah.
that the same time as the
May
CD
14th.
or
Yeah,
okay.
same time as CD.
Okay. Just want
It'll
to
be
make sure.
everywhere. It'll be hard to miss.
Okay. All right. Well, this has been fantastic talking to you.
Thanks, Ken.
You've got to come on much more often.
My pleasure. If you ever want to, how about this? I'll spend a week listening to Press to Play again, and we'll do another Press to Play revisit.
Okay. Okay. I love that album to death. I really do. And
Hey,
I like Paul in all the decades, and I'm not affected by when people say certain music is dated and of its time, because if the only music that we cared about is music that sounds contemporary, you'd be eliminating so much great music that's already been recorded.
when I first heard Todd Rundgren's TRI No World Order record, where he's
Uh-huh.
rapping
Mm,
and like it's all drum machine, I threw up, and I was just like, okay, no, I can't do this. And then one of my bandmates was like, you got to you got to revisit this.
mm.
They popped it in the CD player, and I got it, and I realized it's pretty brilliant. So, you know, I gotta get in the right mood. I gotta get in the right mindset for 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 uh, for Press to Play. I'll give it another shot.
Okay. Well, I say it all the time in my shows, but there's never any final word on any music.
Never.
So, so that's just the beauty of it all. That's art. It's not like your feelings are always going to be the same about every song and every album. They can change at any time. As you get older, your tastes change. There are
Of
things that you
course.
may not have appreciated early on. A lot of the very philosophical George Harrison stuff, especially something like Within You, Without You, was way beyond my comprehension when it came out. And now I think it's one of the most brilliant pieces of music ever, Within You, Without You.
I recently revisited Gon Troppo,
Yep.
I love Gone Troppo.
There you go.
There's a lot of records that I love that even the artists hate. So it's like my favorite Hall and Oates record is War Babies, which they completely discredit. My favorite Kansas album was Final Confessions. I had a funny thing happen with Ken Scott. I went to go see Ken Scott's book release,
Hmm.
and I bought the book, sat in line, stood in line waiting to get it signed, and I immediately went to two records I love, which he produced: Visions of the Animal Beyond the Mahavishnu Orchestra and Vinyl Confessions by Kansas. And he tore those records apart. He was very disappointed on each of those records. And I literally went up to him, I'm like, I have a bone to pick. Two of my favorite albums of all time are not your favorites. He's like, which ones? I'm like, Visions of the Emerald Beyond and Vinyl Confessions. He's like, you like those? I'm like, yes, I do. Actually, I like those more than Birds of Fire and Leftoverture. You know, those are my favorite records from these bands. So again, one man's garbage, one man's gold. I there's a lot of records that I truly love that are disowned by the fans and even by the artists. So
Yeah, you can't just go by what the artists say.
of course.
You can have a completely different opinion from what. I mean, take a look at Paul. When he toured with Flowers in the Dirt, he said he wanted to go out with an album he was proud of, not some piece of garbage. And when he said that, it was really reflecting Press to Play, like he
Yeah.
wasn't proud of Press to Play. So it's a shame. I think Paul, I love him for so many reasons, but I think he's too affected by record sales. He he
Yeah.
he doesn't really know how to judge his own music. So much of his best material are songs that he leaves off his albums. He doesn't really know. You know, the only thing he looks at is, how far did it go on the charts? How did the public respond? There's a million reasons why records sell and why they don't sell, and a lot of it
My favorite.
also, yeah,
Sorry, go. You know,
no, but
sorry.
having worked in radio for so long, radio works in a way where they only care, every radio format cares about demographic audiences, and most of the record buying public is made up of young people. And if your music isn't played to those people, they're not going to hear it and they're not going to buy it. And all you got left are the more loyal, hardcore fans that'll buy it. And those will dwindle in numbers. And no matter, how good his music may be in recent years, in recent decades, the older you get, the less airplay you're going to get on the radio. Okay. And
Yeah.
so, and if you're not being played to young people, that's the whole key. And that's part of the reason why he puts out so many versions of McCartney 3 or Egypt Station to boost his initial sales, also realizing that there's so many Beatle fans out there that eat that stuff up and love collector's items too. But
Yeah.
if you're not being exposed to young people, then the sales are not going to be there no matter what. And this affects every aging artist that's out there.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about that. You can't just
You know
look
what's
at
my favorite song on Egypt Station?
dominoes.
On the original, yes. My favorite song on the entire Egypt Station expanded everything,
Uh-huh.
62nd Street.
Oh, that's a cool one.
I love that song. Again, how did that not make the record and for you make the record? I
I
cannot.
know.
I wish the whole record would have been done by Greg Kurstin.
Hmm.
I feel like it's weird when you have one song on the record that's produced by Ryan Trotter, who is kind of a modern, to
Yeah.
say the least. And there's auto tune on Paul. Who auto tunes Paul? Brian Tedder did.
Well, Paul has the final say on everything.
It's true. When it comes down to it, you got to respect the man. But that's the thing. Makes Paul human. If Paul was brilliant, absolutely spot on, and the worst thing is predictability. You don't want to be predictable.
Exactly. We agree there.
And Paul's definitely stayed off the beaten path. And I love that. And
Me
I was
too.
excited. I mean, I love McCartney 3. Is it perfect? No. Is it, is it like a radio smash? No. Is it Paul being creative at 78 and still being inspired. Because there's two types of death. There's physical death and losing your inspiration. And Paul has never lost his inspiration. You know, what a career. What a brilliant career he's had. You know, hope he's got a few more left in him.
Well, like you said, and I agree, you know, till his last breath, he's going to be creating. That's who the guy is. He's always got ideas pouring out of him. You
Yeah.
know, we still have It's a Wonderful Life coming. We
Yeah.
have an animated film, High in the Clouds, that's been in the works for several years. And then there's any other new music and more archival box sets.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it keeps going.
Yeah. I'm excited. It's great
Okay.
to be a Paul fan. It's great to be a Beatle fan. It's great to be a music fan. And it's great to be, as they say, as in those memes, the world has been around for 4 million years, but you were lucky enough to be around at the same time as Paul, John, George, and Ringo.
Amen to
You know,
that.
amen to that. We are lucky, lucky, lucky people, because the most important thing that came out of Paul McCartney is he raised the bar so high for all of us. And you know, we live life in his you know, he's a religious person. He's like Jesus to me. You know, it's like we live life in his image, and we all, you know, all us music lovers and all us music makers, we're set to just, you know, be as inspired as he is and be as creative as he is. And he's definitely taught us well. And this is us giving back. Ram On is us giving back to him, you know.
Right. And you're gonna keep redoing all of his albums, I hope. So
Yeah. Yeah. Press to Play 50 in 2026. No. It'll be 2036.
36, yeah.
Wow.
You're
That's a
just gonna
long
have
time
to
ago.
live, you're gonna have to live a long life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fernando.
Yes, exactly. All right, buddy.
So thanks so
Thanks so
much
much.
for doing this.
My
Yeah.
pleasure.
And again, the album's called Ram On, due out May 14th. And come back anytime you want.
Thanks, brother.
Okay, take care.
Have a good day, man.
Okay, and thanks to all of you for watching. If you can, please subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you next time.